All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We hear a ton about solar panels, wind turbines, massive electric batteries, but one of the most fascinating frontiers in sustainable energy is actually growing right out of the dirt, or in some cases, floating in a pond. Today, we're taking a really close look at biofuel production. It's this incredible pocket of industrial biotechnology that's quietly revolutionizing how we power everything, from our everyday cars to massive power plants. So, to keep things moving, we've broken this down into 4 quick chapters. We'll trace the evolutionary journey of biofuels, look at the 4 major types we use today, unpack the biotechnology making it all tick, and finally, look at the real-world impact and where we're heading next. To kick things off, we really have to ask ourselves, can we literally grow our fuel instead of drilling for it? Seriously, instead of pumping up millions of years old carbon from deep underground, can we just harness the immediate carbon capturing power of living plants, algae, or even our own waste to fuel the modern world right now? Well, the short answer is yes. At their core, biofuels are basically just fuels generated from renewable organic matter, or biomass. Whether we're talking about leftover agricultural stocks, animal waste, or customized microbes, we can take all that biomass, run it through some pretty clever biological, chemical, or thermochemical processes, and come out the other side with highly efficient energy that actually helps us lower greenhouse gas emissions. Chapter 1: The Evolutionary Journey. Let's see how we got here. Because, this technology definitely hasn't stood still. We've actually evolved through 4 distinct generations of biofuels. It started out with basic food crops and has progressed all the way to highly advanced synthetic biology. And this wasn't just for fun, it was out of absolute necessity. Every time we learned more about the chemistry and the environmental side effects, we had to upgrade our feedstocks, the raw materials we feed right into the system. And looking at this evolution, the contrast is pretty stark. First-generation fuels were great at proving the concept. We got ethanol from corn and sugarcane, which was highly efficient. But there was a catch. They directly competed with the global food supply and ate up massive amounts of land. So scientists were forced to pivot to second and third-generation fuels. Second gen uses non-food waste, like leftover wood and crop stalks. Third gen goes even further, sidestepping agriculture entirely by using fast-growing algae. It requires way less land, yields a ton of oil, and completely ends that food versus fuel debate. Which brings us to the cutting-edge 4th-generation biofuels. This is where it gets really sci-fi. We are leveraging advanced genetic engineering to essentially design organisms from scratch. These microbes are specifically programmed to produce fuel at maximum efficiency while actually pulling carbon out of the air during the process. We're not just finding fuel anymore, we're inventing it. All right, Chapter 2, the 4 major biofuel types. Let's look at what's actually powering things today. First up is bioethanol. The coolest thing about this is that it relies on a 3-step microbial fermentation process. Honestly, it's a lot like brewing beer or baking bread. First, you prep carbohydrate-rich materials, like wheat or molasses. Then, you introduce yeast, specifically Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which goes to town fermenting those sugars and converting them into ethanol. Finally, you distill that whole mixture to purify and concentrate the ethanol so it's ready to be pumped straight into an engine. Next, we have biodiesel. This one relies on a chemical process called trans-esterification. Basically, you take oils like soybean, palm, or even algae oil, and you mix them with an alcohol, usually methanol, plus a catalyst. This reaction strips away the heavy glycerin, and what you're left with is a highly biodegradable, clean-burning fuel that drops perfectly into existing diesel engines. Then there's biogas. This happens when microorganisms break down organic waste, stuff like animal manure, food scraps, or sewage sludge in a totally oxygen-free environment. It's a process called anaerobic digestion, and as you can see, the result is huge, a massive slice of methane, usually 50 to 70%, along with some carbon dioxide. It literally turns a major waste management nightmare into an incredible source of renewable electricity and heat. And finally, biohydrogen. This is arguably the holy grail of clean energy. The goal here is to use biological processes like dark fermentation, photofermentation, or special algae to coax microbes into releasing pure hydrogen gas. Why is it the holy grail? Because when you burn it, the only byproduct it leaves behind is water, just pure water. So, just to lock all that in real quick, bioethanol comes from sugars via fermentation. Biodiesel comes from vegetable or algal oils through transesterification. Biogas is born from organic waste via anaerobic digestion, and biohydrogen comes from microbes and algae through advanced biological processes. Simple enough, right? Moving on to Chapter 3, the role of biotechnology. This is the invisible engine driving the whole industry forward. Think of biotechnology as our ultimate toolkit for rewiring nature. We're using genetic engineering to build customized, supercharged microbes. We're using synthetic biology to map out entirely new biological pathways for fuel synthesis. We've got enzyme technology creating these microscopic chemical scissors that easily chop through tough, woody biomass. And metabolic engineering lets us tweak a microbe's internal chemistry so it pumps out the absolute maximum amount of fuel possible. We aren't just farming anymore. This is microscopic, high-tech manufacturing. And that brings us to Chapter 4, Real-World Impact and the Future. Let's step back and look at the big picture. The tangible advantages of biofuel production are just massive. I mean, we're talking about generating renewable energy and reducing our reliance on imported fossil fuels, which hugely boosts energy security. It provides vital economic development in rural farming areas. Plus, it gives us a sustainable way to process waste materials that would otherwise just sit in landfills, off-gassing methane into the atmosphere. But we absolutely have to be objective about the trade-offs here. Yes, biofuels actively lower our carbon emissions, but those first-generation fuels, they require insane amounts of land and water, and they compete directly with food crops. If we're clearing vital forests just to plant biofuel crops, destroying local biodiversity in the process, we're completely defeating the purpose. It's a really delicate balancing act that requires incredibly strict sustainable management. Which is exactly why the future of this tech is so exciting. We're moving past the food versus fuel debate. Emerging innovations are completely focused on advanced biorefineries, integrated waste-to-energy tech, and fully carbon-neutral systems. Imagine a facility that just takes in raw municipal waste and seamlessly pumps out clean energy using genetically optimized algae. That's where the industry is heading. So, to wrap things up, biofuel production isn't just some niche science experiment. It is a foundational pillar of industrial biotechnology. By mastering things like fermentation, transesterification, and anaerobic digestion, we've definitively proven that we can transform everyday biological materials into reliable, renewable energy sources for the entire planet. As we close out this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. Given how incredibly fast synthetic biology and advanced biorefineries are evolving right now, what other everyday organic materials could eventually be tapped to power our world? Look at the waste we throw away, the plants we grow, the invisible microbes all around us. The energy of tomorrow isn't just something we're going to dig up, it's something we are going to design. Thanks for joining me today. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.